Hey, it's Jason from Fraser Valley Rose Farm, and here I am at Fraser Valley Rose Farm, a time when most of our roses are coming into full bloom, just passing the retail season now a little bit, but still lots to see here, and so let me take you around. And you know, I thought I'd take it sort of in the order that our customers might experience this, coming from the front entrance or parking lot there and in through the wooded garden here. This is a black lace elderberry. Amazing color on that. And just below that, a Japanese bottle brush. Not in bloom yet, but I love the foliage anyway. This area here is where our visitors to the farm would normally arrive, out in the parking lot there. And they might decide to enjoy the gardens, or they might head straight over to the greenhouses to do some shopping. These trees up here would be crab apples. I featured those in another video recently. Kind of a welcoming sight in the early spring. Just before I pass them by, such a humble plant, but this is Centranthus rubra, or Jupiter's beard, or also called red valerian. It has a few different names. And it just shows off beautifully in this area that rarely gets any water. And I know that some people will find this kind of weedy, like coming up through the cracks in the pavement and that kind of thing. But it shows off beautifully here year after year without a lot of maintenance. This cute little guy down here is our native western bleeding heart. And in a shaded location here, this is Rosa rubrifolia. Here showing off its sort of glaucous blue colored leaves. Anybody want to guess what this plant here is just by looking at the leaves? No, it's not cannabis. This is a Vitex agnus castus, or monk's pepper. And I guess the original herbal use for this was that they would give this to monks to try to calm the urges of their particular lifestyle. So it does have kind of a peppery fruit when it's finished. Just wanted to show here also, you can see some of the beautiful purple color on the foliage of this clematis, but right now it's showing off all of its blooms. That is just beautiful. That is clematis, I think it's Recta Sirius Black. And this garden here. And now let's swing around to see the rest of the place. And just quickly cruising past sort of a retail bed area that we set up here to sell some of the plants that we grow here. This one here, just very quickly as I pass it by, is a Dicentra variety called Cupid, with just these lightest pink flowers. This is not the glory of its bloom, but you can get an idea of what it would look like when it is in full bloom. Now, I've showed off these gardens before in their individual videos, but I don't know if I've ever taken you through a whole thing of it, and I'm not going to stop in detail here, but this is the display gardens that we've set up to theme with the different design concepts. We've put in a lot of roses and perennials to try to, in this one for instance, talk about color. That's Lady Ash at the back there, a young climber, and I don't think it's available in Canada so much. So a sport of Aloha, the leucanthemum there on the left, just coming into color. Also Monarda, not too far away. Queen Elizabeth has just finished with its bloom, so it's looking a little bit blown right now, but still quite colorful. And at the back there, that is the Heliopsis bleeding heart, or false sunflower, or perennial sunflower. And of course, in bright color, that is Lysomachia Alexander with that variegation on it. And just getting it established here, clematis on the back fence, still too low to do much show, but also the dappled willow on the front. And if you saw the video from last year, you would recognize that all of these seedlings down here are from the 4 o'clocks that were blooming there last year, coming back quite nicely. Here in the texture garden, we have the bold foliage of Angelica, Allium Christophii. This is a little Sanguisorba, a cute little thing at the front here with such fine little foliage, and look at that Festuca putting on quite a show. Try to get in all sorts of fine and bold foliage choices here. Smoke bush at the back. That little rose there is white coster, polyantha rose. Up here we have meadow rue with the fluffy pink. That's Persicaria, purple fantasy at the front. Yes, it'll spread if I don't try to control it, as will this sumac, but that tiger eye sumac is just a brilliant texture plant. This garden has come together nicely. It's got the blue lavender in the front and the white lavender in the center, just about to bloom, and I've buried a Comte de Chambord rose in the middle there, but should come out nicely once it reaches size. We called that the symmetry garden because of the symmetrical planting of these lavenders. This one here is really dedicated out to nature. And we have a lot of plants here that are intended to draw in and support beneficial insects. And while I sneak through here, I just wanted to get you a quick shot of Lady of Shalott, sort of complementing them nicely. But yeah, other plants that do really, really well for beneficial insects, things like Agastache, sedum peeking out from behind there, Eryngium or sea holly. Still have lots of establishing to do here, but this little blue ground cover has really impressed me with the amount of bees and the beautiful color for a long period. That's Pratia. Earth Angel. Little spots on the petals, but beautiful form on that rose and great fragrance. Speaking of fragrance, this is the fragrance garden, and we're trying to establish on the back there some honeysuckle, some jasmine. The colorful things you see there are stalks, some scented roses, and then it's a Daphne at the front here, which is beautifully scented. The movement garden, we have plants that are intended to sort of wave around in the wind. So again, with that Japanese bottle brush, that same one that we saw at the front end underneath the black elder, this one with just its first bloom coming up, but also grasses and tall alliums and things, they're going to wave around in the wind. This garden over here, the cut flowers, is new this year, and frankly we haven't done all that much with it yet, just for lack of time and running the rose season, but you can see that the snaps and some Iceland poppies are doing their thing back there. Over there we have another set of snaps and some status coming up. So when we have time, we'll play with that a little bit more. This is an area of the garden we call the boulevard because we've kind of made a wide walkway leading up towards the formal rose garden. I've shown this guy, this is Rosarium Uderson, but just glowing color. Really can't beat it because it's just in bloom all the time. Now, as for the plantings in these around the split rail fence that have these little pockets of perennial plantings around them, sort of follow patterns and repeat the patterns a little bit. Definitely some lamium down there. The red towards the center low, that's Astrantia. We've got Salvia caridona in the back. In this case, we have a daylily, and then Euphorbia, and I think that's Fireglow Euphorbia. And as I walk through here, you can see that we've tried to repeat similar patterns, although with variations of plants in them. But the foundation planting, the Astrantia, the Salvia, and the euphorbia remain. This one here with tall lilies coming on, just about to come into color. Those will be fabulous. And the daylilies also just budding out now beautifully. I think that is Heaven's Eye, a once blooming rambler, putting on quite a show just above the split rail fence there. And that's that Lysomachia Alexander again. Roses have been slow to take over what I've set up as pillars here, but you can see this one's starting to put up some big beefy stems now. This is Leverkusen, which is a Cordo's climbing rose that I intend to train as a pillar. This is what we call the formal rose garden, or what we designed to be the formal rose garden, with sort of archways on the front and back, not filled yet. Also the tree and the boxwoods, just to add some structure to it. Now, there is some chance, as I look at this, that even though we called this our formal rose garden, that it may eventually be kind of upstaged by all of our stock field plantings over there. Roses have kind of escaped the main rose garden, but that's okay. Gives us a way to display it. Things are still in bloom from some of the old garden roses, and it's kind of nice to catch that. So this one is Robert Le Diable. I'm going to name some roses as I walk through here, and if I don't name the one that that you see, that you wanted to see, let me know in the comments and I'll try to name it. Just give me a timestamp. But the dark pink or bright pink at the back there, that's Robin Hood, or at least it's in my collection as Robin Hood. At the front here, oof, Abraham Darby never fails to impress, does it? That's in its glory up here. That's Iceberg. This is the mother of the Portland class of roses. This is all Duchess of Portland, or Portlandica. Very simple flowers, but performs nicely. This is Buff Beauty. About to take some cuttings off of that one. This guy with the giant blousy flowers. That is Chicago Peace. Have a Spirea. I think that's a Deutzia, actually. This one here, the one at the back is Spirea, the one in the front then is Deutzia. Yellow, Bill Reed. The very beautiful purple here is Cardinal de Richelieu, showing off its suckery and brambly habit, I'm afraid, but very worth having in the garden. Sophie's Perpetual. Tends to darken as the flowers age. This guy here is William Shakespeare 2000. And maybe I'll go on the inside of the circle for this one. That's Fellowship. Not its best blooms, but I guess we're not going to catch everything perfectly. And this is Charles de Mills. And I hope you can gather how large those blooms are. It's not in its absolute perfect fresh state of blooms, but still just tons of color there. That is Dainty Bess peeking up from the back there, a young specimen of Dainty Bess. I'm looking forward to that one doing a lot. That sort of neon orange is Fred Lode's. I just took cuttings off of that one, so I apologize. My timing could have been better. The ever so perfect blooms of Madame Hardy. That's a damask rose with the green centers. Of course, you get the gist with William Lobb here. Has long arms. Beautiful mossed buds. That's Ballerina down low. That is this sort of beautiful, I don't know, coral pink. That is Ferdy or Hanamagawa. And moving on to the rose field here, I'm not going to be able to show you every single rose in detail because that would just make this a super long video. What I will try to do is just give you some of the highlights. And this would be one of those highlights. This is Souvenir de Dr. Germain with just velvety purple blooms. It's a little bit past its prime now, and what we've tried to do as we build this garden is make sure that in every case we have the name across the bottom of the plant. That is Wild Blue Yonder. And over here, can you see the family resemblance to just Joey? But this is Abea de Cluny. And I'm afraid some of the flowers are blown a little bit here, but you can definitely get an idea of what it's like when it's in fresh bloom. This is Westerland. Here kept like in shrub form, so we're just letting it grow out to be about a 6 or 7 foot shrub, and I cut it down quite low every year just to keep it in bounds. Definitely could use it as quite a vigorous climber. You have the luminous blooms and the glossy foliage here of Daybreaker. This is Pompanella, or fairy tale Pompanella, I'm not sure exactly, but people either kind of love it or they hate it because it has these very rounded buds that almost never open all the way through. So it strikes people as either unfinished or just a very, very cool look for the garden. It is distinct. Usually blooms in a big flush now, and then if you cut it back promptly, you'll get something late in the season, but I wouldn't call it continuous. I am just about to cut this one down for propagation. This is Roberta Bondar, a climbing rose, another one that I've sort of, so far at least, kept trained in its shrub form. But isn't that something? Just a great color, very healthy plant. I have Guillain de Feligonde here, which kind of always just stands out from the crowd. Beautiful clusters of blooms, and this is in bloom in 3 places in my garden right now. One in the shade, one freestanding on the fence, and then this third one here, and can be trained as a rambler or a climber as well, but all 3 of mine so far are in the shrub form. When I did my old garden roses tour, I kind of missed the bloom period just by a little bit of this Chapeau de Napoleon. And of course the crested buds are still the star of the show, but the blooms aren't half bad either. And this is Black Caviar, a brand new shrub rose for me this year. And yes, it really does lock down those super deep tones of red and purple and almost approaching black in bud, depending on the weather. Shrub rose. Well, I don't know if I've ever seen anything quite like this in the clusters of flowers, but this is called Violet Hood. And right over this way is a damask rose called Ispahan. And obviously I showed up Kazanlik because it's the classic choice, but I would say that Ispahan is a more garden-worthy shrub in terms of its flowers and presentation than Kazanlik. And now just a couple of wide shots to show you sort of the scope of the rose field. Lots in color right now. Could explore for a long time in here. And guess what? Empty tires, and you know what that means. We have some new roses on the way to keep adding interest for following years. Well, thanks so much for joining me today on a tour of the farm, but also more so than just thanking you for today, I want to thank our local customers and our YouTube viewers for your support over time. It wouldn't be possible to do this without you, obviously from a financial point of view, but also from a moral support point of view, your comments, your likes, just coming along and enjoying the gardens with us as we build them. There's lots more to come. We have plans for the coming year, so do stay tuned on that.